Hello kittens, Andy Barley here.
And Flo McCatty.
We're here to tell you about Flandy. What's Flandy, Flo?
So it's a podcast we do every fortnight, discussing current events.
And Flandy Flo sounds like the name of a Pokemon.
Flandy Flo.
Flandy Flo.
Wonder what it would look like.
An amalgamation of me and you.
Yeah, with massive eyelashes and a mohawk.
And shit tattoos. So it is available on Podbean, it is available on iTunes, what else?
Spotify.
And
Google Podcast?
yeah.
I've actually remembered it.
Well done.
I know.
And the website.
Oh yeah.
Flybypants.com.
Hi guys, and welcome to my newest episode of Spare Pants. Woo! Today's episode is going to be all about books. Now, I was never spoilt when growing up, but my parents were always happy to buy me books, so that's why I love reading. So I made it my goal to read 50 books this year, and it definitely hasn't gone to plan. I think I've literally done about 6 books, which is shit, seeing as it's, we're nearly halfway through May. So if you have any book recommendations, please let me know. And if you ever want to save money on books, I recommend looking in charity shops. So about 80% of my book collection is secondhand. And you can also get secondhand books off Amazon. But today I'm going to be talking about some books that I've really loved and enjoyed, so I hope you enjoy this episode. So the first books I'm going to be talking about are historical fiction ones. Now I found historical fiction quite hit and miss sometimes. I read one recently, it was called The Rose Garden, and it was one of the shittest books I've ever read. So it really dragged and it was super boring, but these ones I loved. So the first one is Labyrinth by Kate Moss. This is set in Middle Age and modern day France. It tells the story of Alice, who is volunteering on an archaeological site and discovers 2 skeletons in a cave. At 531 pages, it is pretty long, and it does drag slightly in some parts. However, I have read it about 5 times and I would totally read it again. It talks about the Holy Grail and it's just very engrossing and grabs your attention. And it makes me want to visit Carcassonne and go to all the castles and stuff. So the next books are all of the ones by Kate Morton. Now I think I've read all of her books apart from one and they are incredible. The first one I read was The Lake House. It tells the tale of the Edivane family, and on the night of the midsummer party, the family experiences a significant loss. And then flash forward 70 years, policewoman Sadie Sparrow is visiting her grandfather in Cornwall, where she discovers an abandoned house and learns its history. The Forgotten Garden by Kate Morton is also amazing. It's about a 4-year-old child who is abandoned on an Australian ship, and they don't remember their name. If you're a fan of fairy tales, you might enjoy that one. So now I'm going to talk about some children's books, which kind of shows my intelligence level, the fact that I still read kids' books at 22 years old. But anyway, I think if you're in a bit of a reading slump, a children's book might be a good idea. So I've always loved Enid Blyton, but the Famous 5 books are on another level. These books feature the adventures of a group of children and their cute dog. They're so good, and a couple of years ago I went through a stage of reading all of them. There's this amazing bookshop in Lewes where you can buy first editions, which smell really nice. And I bought loads of the Famous 5 ones. The Chronicles of Narnia have always been a favourite of mine, as I can remember my dad reading them to me when I was little. Written by C.S. Lewis, who was best mates with the Lord of the Rings author J.R.R. Tolkien, There are a series of fantasy novels set in the land of Narnia, and it's a world of magic and talking animals, and I love them. Now, if you haven't read The Secret Garden, what are you doing with your life? After cholera kills her parents, Mary Lennox is sent to Yorkshire to live in an isolated manor house with her secretive and mysterious uncle, and then she discovers a garden. Now, when I fancy something slightly trashy and teenagery, I pick out the Georgia Nicholson books by Louise Renison. It's about the life of Georgia, and it talks about boys, friendships, and generally just being a teenager and growing up. And I've never laughed at books so much in my life. And I used to stay up to the earlier hours of the morning reading them. They're that good. So if you ever want something easy, twee, and really cringy, the Kathy Bramley books are a good shout. I don't actually know if that's her actual name. I've looked it up, but it sounds like one of those pseudonyms. It doesn't sound like a real name. But the first one of hers I read was Hetty's Farmhouse Bakery. And yeah, it does sound really cringe. So the main character is a woman called Hetty who lives on her husband's working farm. And then she basically just starts making pies. It's like a romance novel. It's kind of cute. And the books are so easy to read, you can do it in less than a day. And if you want something similar, then the authors Heidi Swain and Trisha Ashley are quite fun as well. Agatha Christie is known as the Queen of Crime. She wrote 66 detective novels and tons of short stories. The Miss Marple ones are my favourites. And I think the first one I read was The Body in the Library. It's a posh old couple with the pantries find the body of a woman in their home, Gossington Hall, and Miss Marple comes to solve the mystery. Miss Marple is basically this sassy old woman who solves crimes, and I want to be like her when I'm old. Classic books have always been a bit intimidating for me. I've attempted to read Pride and Prejudice about 4 times. I get about 20 pages in and I just give up. I find it so tedious and dull. There's a few classics that I did enjoy. Far from the Madding Crowd is written by Thomas Hardy, and it tells the story of Bathsheba Everdeen. Set in rural England, it's about the relationships between Bathsheba and 3 super sexy men. That's the dream, right? I can't even get one bloke to look at me, and she's got 3 gorgeous ones after her. Great Expectations tells the story of an orphan named Pip, the beautiful Estella, and this mysterious weirdo Miss Havisham who always wears a wedding dress. So this book was pretty difficult to read as the vocabulary is quite challenging, but the storyline is so good. And if you want to watch a good mini-series after you've read it, obviously, the BBC did one a few years ago, and Douglas Booth is the main character, so that should make you want to watch it. My Cousin Rachel is the only Daphne du Maurier book I've read, and although it took me bloody ages to get through, it was worth it. Ambrose is the owner of a massive estate in Cornwall, and he meets his late cousin's widow, Rachel. And she's a bit of a weirdo, she's kind of creepy. It's a good read. If you want a shorter classic to read, Great Gatsby is a good shout. Set in the summer of 1922, it's about mysterious millionaire Jay Gatsby and his obsession with Daisy Buchanan. I've read it a few times. And then, after you've read it, watch the Leonardo DiCaprio film. Oh, he is so beautiful in that. Psychological crime thrillers are a genre that I've been reading tons of recently. They're so gripping and you can't help but continue reading. The most recent one was Now You See Her by Heidi Perks. This book is about Harriet, her child Alice, and Harriet's friend Charlotte. Charlotte was looking after Alice at a school fete. She looked at her phone for a second, and then when she looked back up, the child was gone. If you want a book to scare the shit out of you, The Woman in the Dark by Vanessa Savage is incredible, and I think it's going to be coming out on BBC soon, I've heard. I remember when I was reading it, my family actually told me to shut up because I was gasping so much, it was so tense. So when Sarah's mother dies, she goes into a downward spiral. So her husband Patrick moves the family to the seaside house where he grew up. He sees it as the happiest place ever, but to everyone else around them it's known as the murder house. Ooh, tense. Ever since I studied it for my history A-level, the witch craze has always been fascinating to me. So when I read Into the Water by Paula Hawkins, it ticked all the boxes. After the sudden death of her sister Nell, Jules returns to the town of Beckford. Now, Nell was always fascinated by this particular body of water in this town. And this body of water had claimed the lives of many women throughout time. In a Cottage in a Wood by Cass Green was a book I read super quickly. So Neve meets a strange woman called Isabel on the Waterloo Bridge one night, and before Isabel jumps to her death, she forces a parcel into Neve's hands. It has loads of twists and turns and a really unexpected ending, which I love. I hate it with books when you already predict the ending. It's like, what's the point of me even reading this? When you finish it, you're like, I fucking knew that was going to happen. I don't tend to read a lot of autobiographies, but there is one I've read multiple times, and I'm definitely going to get judged for it. But if you like the show Made in Chelsea, you should give Binky's book a read. And I can actually imagine that the fair few people who listen to this are rolling their eyes right now. But basically, Made in Chelsea is the best reality show, and obviously the OG cast were the best. So read Binky's book if you want something fun, easy and girly. Now, I am not great when it comes to reading non-fiction stuff. I find it quite challenging to read, as I'm not the sharpest person. But my friend Andy led me the book Talking with Psychopaths and Savages. I do actually need to give it back to him when all this lockdown shit's over. So written by criminologist Christopher Berry D. It goes into the minds of some fucked up people. He talks to some notorious serial killers, and it's definitely not the most pleasant read in the world. But if you're into true crime and maybe you want to discover some new cases, then definitely check it out. One of the books I can always remember reading is Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. So it tells the tale of Louisa Clark, who starts a new job looking after wheelchair-bound Will Trainer. It's like a romance novel, and it discusses topics like euthanasia and whether we should have the choice to die to end suffering. And it made me cry so much, and the film is incredible as well. It's got the woman in Game of Thrones in it. I can't remember her name. Lullaby by Layla Slimani is a bestseller, and I can totally see why. Based on a real life story, it's about the murder of 2 children by their nanny. I know it sounds really sad and horrible, but it kind of discusses family relationships, and I couldn't put it down, which I always think is a sign of a good book, when you just need to keep on reading it. The Secret by Catherine Hughes was a book that everyone should try and read. It's described as a heartbreaking novel of tragedy, love and second chances. When Beth finds a newspaper clipping in her mother's things, she realises that in order to save her son, she needs to look back into the past. The last book I'm going to mention is The Girl with a Pearl Earring by Tracy Chevalier. So this is a fictional story about artist Johannes, I don't know how you say his name, Vermeer, who did the Girl with the Pearl Earring painting. Now, I'm most definitely not an art history fan. I don't know anything about art, but this book was really interesting. So 16-year-old Griet has to leave the family home after her father's injured in an accident, and she starts working as a maid in the Vermeer household, and then starts to model for his paintings. This is a great read, and it made me feel really clever when I read it, so give it a try. So I hope you enjoyed that episode of Spare Pants. My episodes come out on the 14th of every month, and I'm probably going to be doing some bonus ones as well, as I'm bored shitless at the moment. So check out mine and my mate Andy's other podcast, Flandy. It's so much fun to record, even though obviously we're having to FaceTime at the moment, so the audio isn't top notch, but it's still fun. You can contact me at flo@flybypants.com and follow me on Insta, which is f.mccatty. Thank you for listening.
Hello kittens, Andy Barley here just to quickly let you know about Flying by the Seats of Our Pants. It is a monthly podcast released on the first Monday of every month. It is discussion and interview based with very little preparation done by myself. There's a different guest each month and you can listen to it on Podbean, on Google Podcast, iTunes, Spotify, and of course if you visit my website flybypants.com you can subscribe and have a look at everything that I am involved in at the moment. I look forward to you listening to it.